Sometimes all it takes is a single moment to change everything. A single sentence, a single glance, or a single verse. Life has a strange way of leading people to the truth when they least expect it. And when it comes to the Qur'an, even one verse can touch the heart so deeply that it awakens something that's been asleep for years. This is the story of how one verse from the Qur'an, just one, became the turning point in a person's life, and how it led them from confusion to clarity, from doubt to faith, and from emptiness to peace. In today's fast-moving world, people are constantly searching. They may not say it out loud, but inside, many are desperate for meaning, for something that gives their life a sense of purpose. Some look for it in careers, others in relationships, some in fame or wealth. But there are still those moments of silence when all the noise fades and the soul whispers, there must be more to life than this. And it is often in those quiet moments that the Quran finds its way into a heart. Our story begins with someone who wasn't religious, wasn't practicing, and had no particular interest in Islam. Life had been busy, filled with distractions, and religion was just something that belonged to the past. But deep down, this person was restless. Something felt missing. Something that no entertainment, achievement, or even love could truly fill. One day, while scrolling through their phone, maybe on social media, or maybe just listening to a podcast, they came across a verse from the Qur'an. No one was preaching, no one was arguing. It was just a calm voice or a quiet caption quoting a verse from the final revelation. At first, they were about to scroll past, but something told them to pause. Something about the words seemed different. And then it happened. The verse wasn't long or complicated, but it spoke directly to the pain they were feeling, the questions they had been carrying, and the emptiness they had tried so hard to ignore. It felt like the verse was written just for them, as if God was speaking to them personally, through time, across all barriers, straight to their heart, their eyes filled with tears, not out of sadness, but out of relief. It was the first time they had felt truly seen, truly understood, truly loved by their Creator. And from that moment, something changed. The walls of resistance started to fall, the doubts began to melt, and a seed of faith was planted. That single verse led to another, and then another. They began to explore the Qur'an, not out of pressure or guilt, but out of genuine curiosity and awe. How could these words, spoken over 1,400 years ago, know exactly what they were feeling today? How could something so ancient feel so alive? The more they read, the more they cried. Not because they were sad, but because they finally felt like they were coming home. This is the power of the Quran. It doesn't always need long speeches or debates. Sometimes it just needs one verse, one drop of light to enter a dark heart, one touch from divine words to remind a person of their worth, their purpose, and their Creator. In this video, we take you through that powerful story, a story of change, reflection, and rebirth, a story that reminds us all, never underestimate the power of even a single verse of the Quran. Because sometimes one verse is all it takes to change a life forever. He was never someone who hated religion. In fact, he had grown up around people of faith, Christians, Muslims, Jews. But like many others, he simply never felt a connection. Religion seemed distant, old-fashioned, and unrelated to the world he lived in. He believed in being a good person, in kindness, and in truth, but he never thought he needed anything more. He lived his life chasing success, enjoying comfort, and building his own version of happiness. But deep down, there were moments, quiet, lonely ones, where he felt a heavy emptiness that he couldn't explain. He would lie awake at night, staring at the ceiling, wondering why he felt so incomplete when everything in his life seemed to be going well. He often watched the news, saw the headlines about Muslims and Islam, and like many, he had developed stereotypes in his mind. He never researched it deeply, never read the Qur'an, but assumed it was just another religion with outdated rules and harsh views. Occasionally, he would joke about religion, especially Islam, with friends, repeating things he had heard online or in movies. He didn't mean to offend anyone. To him, it was all harmless, just opinions, just laughs. He never imagined that one day the very thing he mocked would become the thing that gave him peace. It happened unexpectedly. One night, he was scrolling through videos on social media. It had been a tough week, work stress, personal arguments, and a deep sense of dissatisfaction. As he flipped past video after video, one clip caught his eye. It wasn't flashy or dramatic. It was just a calm voice reciting a verse from the Qur'an. Something about the voice stopped him. And then the words hit. It was a verse about the heart, about how true peace and contentment only come through the remembrance of Allah. He didn't know what Allah truly meant, but the words struck him like lightning. Peace, heart, remembrance. It felt like someone had opened a window in a dark room. He replayed the video, then again and again. Something about the verse felt so personal, so real, as if it had been waiting just for him. And in that moment, his curiosity turned into stillness. He didn't scroll past. He didn't laugh. For the first time in his life, he wanted to know more, not because of pressure, but because something inside him had been touched deeply and permanently. He couldn't sleep that night. The verse kept echoing in his mind like a soft whisper that refused to fade. He didn't understand everything about it, but the feeling it left behind was undeniable. There was a strange calmness in his heart, as if the verse had unlocked something buried deep within him. It wasn't just words anymore. It was something alive, something sacred. For the first time, he felt like maybe he had missed something important all his life. The next day, he went back to the same video and listened again, this time paying more attention to every word. He even looked up the translation and context of the verse. What he found left him speechless. The verse spoke about the nature of the human heart, how it longs for peace, how it finds rest not in money or people, but in the remembrance of its creator. That hit him like a wave. It described his life perfectly. He had everything the world told him would bring happiness, but he had never truly felt peace. From there, a new journey began. Quietly, without telling anyone, he began to read more about the Qur'an. He found a translation online and started from the beginning. At first, he expected to find contradictions, harsh rules, or things he couldn't connect with. But instead, he found wisdom, beauty, and a deep sense of justice and mercy. It wasn't what he had heard about in the media. It wasn't what people mocked or feared. It was something else entirely. It was as if every page was written not just for the world, but specifically for him. He would pause often while reading, tears filling his eyes, wondering how he could feel so connected to a book revealed so many centuries ago. He still had questions, he still had doubts, but something had changed in his heart. It no longer wanted to fight or mock, it wanted to listen. Every verse felt like a conversation between him and something far greater. It wasn't about converting or impressing anyone. It was about finding what he had been searching for his entire life. And deep inside, he knew, whatever path he was now on, it had begun with just one verse, and he would never be the same again. Days turned into weeks, and what started as curiosity slowly grew into a quiet obsession. Every free moment he had, he found himself going back to the Qur'an. Not out of obligation, but because it felt like nourishment for his soul. He read slowly, reflecting on each verse, letting the words settle into his heart. He kept going back to that one verse, the one that first touched him, as if it were an anchor. It reminded him of where it all started and why he kept going. What amazed him most was how relevant it all felt. The Qur'an didn't speak in vague or distant language. It spoke about real struggles, fear, loss, hope, forgiveness, and inner peace. It spoke about human nature in a way he had never seen before. He felt like the book understood him better than he understood himself. One day, while walking through a park, he paused under a tree and looked up at the sky. For the first time in his life, he whispered a prayer. Not in any language he had memorized, not a formal ritual, just an honest, quiet whisper from his heart to something greater. He didn't even know who he was talking to completely. He just said, "If you're real, keep guiding me. I want to know you." That moment felt heavier than anything he had experienced. It was pure, it was honest, and something deep inside told him that his prayer had been heard. As he continued reading, he came across more verses that moved him. Verses about mercy, about second chances, about how no matter how far a person may go, God's door is always open. These weren't just verses for him, they were lifelines. He felt like he was slowly waking up from a long, restless sleep. Every chapter gave him something new to think about. Every verse felt like a piece of a puzzle he didn't even know was missing. He still didn't tell anyone. This was between him and his heart, between him and the book. He wasn't ready to explain it, and maybe he didn't even need to. All he knew was that he was changing. He felt calmer, more grounded. The anger he used to carry, the mocking he once felt, it was all fading away. And it all started because of one verse that reached him when he least expected it. He began to notice how his view of the world was changing. The people he once judged, the beliefs he once ridiculed, all now appeared in a different light. He started seeing Muslims not through the lens of stereotypes, but through the truth he was slowly uncovering. He watched interviews, listened to converts, and saw stories of people from all walks of life, doctors, teachers, athletes, who had found peace in Islam just like he was beginning to. Each story felt like a mirror, showing him that he was not alone. What touched him most was their sincerity. No one had forced them. They weren't looking for fame or attention. They were just people who found something deeper, something their souls had been craving. And he understood that craving now. He was living it. One evening, while watching a documentary about the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, he was struck by the Prophet's kindness, his patience with those who insulted him, and the way he lived with humility despite being a leader. It broke every image he had once believed. How could a man who was so gentle, so forgiving, be the one he had mocked for years without ever truly knowing? That night, he cried for the first time in a long while, not from pain, but from a strange mix of regret and peace. He regretted all the times he had laughed at Islam, the times he had dismissed it. But he also felt peace, because he had finally started to see the truth for himself. He no longer read the Qur'an as a skeptic trying to find flaws. He read it like someone looking for light. Every verse gave him more clarity. He realized that Islam wasn't a religion of hatred or violence. It was a religion of balance, compassion, and deep spiritual purpose. It didn't demand perfection. It invited growth. And he was growing, slowly but surely. People around him noticed the change. He was calmer, more thoughtful. Some asked him what was going on, and he just smiled. He wasn't ready to explain it all yet, but he knew the time would come. For now, his journey was sacred and personal. and it all traced back to that one verse. Faiza, one moment that changed everything forever. One day, as he sat quietly by his window watching the sun set beyond the skyline, he felt something different. A stillness, a sense of clarity he had never known before. The verse that had once stirred his heart now echoed within him like a familiar rhythm. It wasn't just about reading anymore, it was about living. He began to implement small changes in his daily life. He started being more mindful of his actions, more intentional with his time, and more kind in his words. He began praying, not in the perfect way, but in the most sincere way he knew. It was raw, sometimes silent, sometimes tearful, but it was real. Each prayer felt like a conversation, not a ritual, and each one brought more peace. The transformation wasn't overnight, but it was steady. He no longer felt empty at night. That sense of loneliness and restlessness was replaced with contentment. Even in difficult moments, he found comfort in turning to God. He read more about the prophet's life and the way he treated the poor, the orphans, even his enemies. It all touched him deeply. He thought about his past, about how many years he had spent avoiding faith, mocking religion, pushing away what he never truly understood. And yet, despite all of that, here he was, being pulled toward the very thing he once rejected. One day, he came across a verse that spoke of God's mercy being greater than all things. That verse broke him. He wept, realizing that no matter how far he had gone, God was still inviting him back. It was like finding a home you didn't even know you were missing. That verse became a reminder that it's never too late to return, never too late to change, never too late to find peace. He still wasn't perfect, he still made mistakes, but he was no longer the man who mocked what he didn't understand. He was now the man who listened, who learned, and who humbled himself in front of the truth. That one verse, that small moment, had planted a seed. And from that seed grew a new life, one rooted not in arrogance or ignorance, but in faith, humility, and the quiet, unshakable peace that only comes from truly knowing your Creator. As the journey continued, his heart grew softer and his vision clearer. What once seemed like a book of restrictions now felt like a map to true freedom. He no longer saw Islam as a set of rules imposed on life, but as a divine guide to living a meaningful, balanced, and fulfilled existence. That one verse, which had seemed so simple at first, had unfolded into an entire world of understanding. It became the doorway to a relationship with the Qur'an and with God that he never imagined possible. The more he reflected, the more he realized that the change within him wasn't forced. It was natural. It was as if his soul had recognized the truth before his mind did. His nights, once filled with distractions and noise, were now moments of deep reflection. Sometimes he would sit in silence, thinking about the life he once led and how different he felt now. There was no need to impress anyone, no need to explain anything. He was at peace with himself, and he began to understand why so many people who find Islam describe the experience not as changing religions, but as coming home, because that's what it felt like coming home to something his heart had always known but had forgotten. As he continued learning, he started seeing everything around him differently: nature, people, even pain. The Qur'an taught him that every hardship had a purpose, that nothing was random, and that faith didn't mean a life without struggle. It meant a life with direction. These lessons became a source of strength. He still had challenges, but he faced them now with patience and trust. He understood that life was a test, but not a cruel one, a test designed to bring him closer to the one who created him. Eventually, he shared his journey with a close friend. He expected confusion, maybe judgment, but instead, his friend just listened, quietly and respectfully, and in that moment, he realized how powerful silence could be, just like the silence of the old Muslim man who once listened without a word and changed his heart forever. Now, whenever someone asks him what changed his life, he smiles and says, just one verse. Because that's the truth. One verse, one moment, and a heart willing to listen. That's all it took to begin a journey that would last forever. As we reach the end of this powerful story, we're reminded of one simple truth. Guidance can come from the most unexpected places. A heart once filled with doubt, even mockery, can transform completely with just one verse from the Qur'an. That's the beauty of divine truth. It doesn't need to shout. It doesn't need to argue. Sometimes all it takes is silence, sincerity, and a soul ready to receive. This story is more than just about one man's journey. It's a reminder to all of us that no heart is too hard, no past too dark, and no person too far gone to find light. One verse, one moment of reflection, one quiet night where the soul whispers to its creator, that can be the beginning of everything. And sometimes the biggest changes don't start with debates or loud voices, but with calm observation, humble reflection, and an open heart. We've seen how one verse from the Quran was able to crack through layers of pride and pain and plant a seed of faith that grew into peace, clarity, and purpose. If this story resonates with you, know that your own journey can begin the same way. Whether you're curious, searching, or just standing at the edge of faith, take a moment, reflect, ask, and let the message of the Quran speak to your heart. We thank you from the bottom of our hearts for watching this video. Your time, attention, and presence mean everything to us. We hope this story touched you, inspired you, and maybe even moved you to explore more. The Quran is full of verses that have changed millions of lives. Perhaps your verse is waiting for you too. If this story inspired you, please consider liking the video, subscribing to our channel, and sharing it with someone who might benefit from it. Your support helps us continue sharing real, heart-opening stories that show the world the true beauty of Islam. Until next time, stay blessed, stay curious, and keep seeking truth. May peace and light find their way into every heart that watches this. Thank you. And assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, Muhammad.